modifies reality. Open up, inner flower, peace and love, inner power. Open up, inner flower, peace and love, inner power. Remember the days we saw purple haze. 1 and 1 and 1 is 3. Hey, hey, baby, what you do to me?
And they're wagging that dog, and the reason that they're wagging that dog is because they feel if they can control the politicians, they don't really have to care what people think. Just look what happened with Prop Z in Oakland and what's going on with that. And while people are saying we want marijuana legal, they're closing up the clubs in Oakland. So what we really have to do is get to the point of realizing that we're not dealing with the issue of is marijuana good for you. We're dealing with the issue, these people, these are special interests, those are the only people opposed to it, and I don't have time to go into it, but how to separate the politicians from the cops. Because right now, there's a bungee cord between those two groups, and we have to cut that bungee cord and let the cops go into free fall, because that's what the people want. They want civilly regulated marijuana. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Marcia Rosenbaum. Marcia is a sociologist who did her doctoral work on heroin addiction, and she's really been in the trenches of harm reduction on heroin addiction. But I want to tell a story on Marcia. I know she's a sociologist because we were at lunch one day and we were talking about Montel Williams as a spokesman for medical cannabis, and we were kind of guessing about what sort of reaction Montel would have in the world out there. And as a sociologist, she said, well, let's just start asking people. So she hopped up from her chair and she went from table to table, and she would ask them, when I say Montel, what is you hearing? Everybody knew Montel Williams. They were able to give that identification. And then she'd say, well, do you know that Montel has been in the news lately? And mostly what would happen is that the demographic of kind of 50-year-old white women knew that Montel had been in the news because he had been on the talk show circuit for his medical cannabis. Or they knew that he'd been on the news. And then she would say, well, do you know why he's been on the news? And most of them didn't, but they would say, well, what's going on? And then Marcia would use the occasion to introduce the idea, and she said, well, he has multiple sclerosis and he smokes medical cannabis. And I will never forget the response from one of the women at one of the tables who, when Marcia said that, snorted and said, well, that'll make him forget he has MS. I was like, wow, that is the kind of hostility we're dealing with out there when we talk about this issue. And Marcia is very courageous to raise the question with people in a restaurant. She's also been very courageous, probably the person single most responsible for bringing the California Parent-Teacher Association on board for sensible approaches to drug education in our schools. In the terms of rhetoric, she is a mom who cares about her kids. It makes her a very valuable messenger in bringing the message of harm reduction. So without further ado, Marcia Rosenbaum.
Now remember, we were in Los Angeles for that lunch. We were not in San Francisco. The reaction would have been very different here, I think. So I want to share with you some of my experiences with rhetoric. You know, when Alan called me to ask me to be on this panel, I didn't even ask him what the panel was. I said, of course, you know, whatever you need. And then I looked at the title of the panel, Reefer Rhetoric and Retorts, Winning Ways to Frame the Marijuana Debate. And at that moment when I looked at it, I thought I had just gone on a trip with, an actual trip to Turkey actually, with my friend Donald Abrams. And he was talking about how his mother, not only does she talk about how the glass is half empty, but the glass is half empty and about to tip over. And that's how I felt lately, this last month or so.